The member has up to 5 minutes. The honourable member for Winnipeg Centre.
I remember back in 1995, 1996, as a young child, watching some of the news surrounding Indigenous status and the status of Indigenous women in this country. And I remember listening to an Indigenous woman who said, I am not just simply a second-class citizen in Canada, I am a third-class citizen because I am a woman. You know, I have heard in this debate about equality. What does equality mean in this country when the outcomes are so different? What does equality mean when outcomes are so different? When we see the Gladue case in Alberta, where a woman in the justice system is treated very unequally, where she is essentially cut up inside with a 6-inch gash in her vagina, and the judge lets the perpetrator off. And only after an outcry does the prosecutor of Alberta actually take it back to court. That's a difference in outcome, Mr. Speaker. You know, I've heard lots of interesting comments in the House. And I've heard one of the comments is because this bill doesn't deal with all of the justice issues related to the criminal code, that it shouldn't apply, that it has no importance. We need to deal with them all of them at the same time. Well, let's take that first step. Let's take a first step, Mr. Speaker. I don't need to get emotional about this, but I think this impacts a lot of people that I know. There is Bill S-215, an act to amend the criminal code with assaults against public transit operators. Now, taxi drivers from 1997 till 2011 had the number of homicides was 23 from 1997 to 2011. And we modified that law. Parliament modified that law. Just in 2013, the RCMP, in only RCMP jurisdictions in Canada, there were 42 recorded female homicides, victims. 17 of those were Indigenous. That is 40%. That's a fact. The outcomes, equality, we talk about it, but the outcomes seem to be so different. So what are we actually doing? It's great to have some programs, spend some money, maybe increase, you know, I wear the moose hide. I wear the moose hide patch all the time, but what does that really change? Because I have people ask me all the time what it means, and no one seems to know. We know it's about Indigenous men and boys taking a stand against violence against Indigenous women and girls and children, but yet how many people do I keep being asked every day what I'm wearing that for and what it means? Yet we've handed out 1 million of them across the country. Did you know we also had a bill called C-35? It's called the Justice for Animals and Service Act, known as Quanto's Law. Now, Quanto was a police dog who was killed while on duty. And that bill created a specific new offense prohibiting the killing or injuring of a law enforcement animal. And it created a minimum sentence. Who's worth more? Quanto? Tina Fontaine? Gladue? Helen Betty Osborne? There are lots of organizations that support this. I can list them all off. The First Nations of Saskatchewan, the Assembly of First Nations have passed resolutions in support of this. There are female or women's groups across the prairies that have asked for legislation on this. And it deserves a full and wholesome debate in this House. And I hope the government takes this and moves forward, because I'm sure the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women's Inquiry will have something about the justice system. And I hope we actually go ahead and change some of these laws so that the equality means the equality of outcomes. Where that if you're walking around the streets of downtown Winnipeg, that you know that you are just as valued as anyone else, no matter what your birth in this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.